talk is like I've self-censored here and called it "Why Paddy Should Tell His Employer." The real title is "Why Paddy Should Tell His Employer to Go Fuck Himself," especially if he's a public sector employee. I found some pictures here on the internet to rant to. So yeah, Ireland. This is the most Irish picture I could find on the internet. A lovely country. A green island, and I was embarrassingly, I realized how embarrassingly little I knew about Irish history, so I had to do some research, and I turned to the most reliable source on the internet, like random YouTube videos, and I figured out a couple of things, and drew my own conclusions. I think you know what this is. This is St. Patrick's Cross, which is a part of the Union Jack, because before you guys became independent, you were a part of the British Empire. So they were your masters and you were their slaves, and before you reclaimed your independence. So what happened? Well, there was a lot of farmers in Ireland, and you raised cattle and sold meat to the British Empire, and you kept the potatoes for yourselves, because as we learned from the Lord of the Rings movies, Irish people love potatoes. But then coronavirus hit the potato industry, and all the potatoes got COVID, and everyone started to starve, which is why you guys decided to hop on dangerous boats and flee to the newfound world, America. So here's a picture of starving Irish people fleeing to America. And here's also, well, this is harder to use than I think I am. I'm not an apple guy, more of a potato guy. So here's a sack of potatoes yet unaffected by coronavirus. It's a big thing in the 19th century. And here we can see a bunch of people leaving, bringing as many belongings as they could to flee the touches of the British Empire, which sort of forced you guys to send stuff over to the UK, over to England, instead of keeping it for yourself. So everyone was looking for more freedom. What's his name? David Hasselhoff was also looking for freedom. That's a deep reference, but usually when people flee one country for another, it's because they yearn for more freedom, because they're in the clutches of a violent government. And as so here, sure, the potato plague had something to do with it too, but the land of opportunity lay on the other side of the Atlantic. And a lot of the Irish had a huge influence on the United States. A bunch of Irishmen signed the Declaration of Independence. As you can see here, marked in green. These were the gentlemen who co-signed the Declaration of Independence. So Irish influence is all over America. And some of you guys got jobs in the health and safety department. Others took to the streets and fought rival gangs in New York, as depicted by Martin Scorsese's beautiful movie Gangs of New York. Here, the Irish versus the inbred Americans. And as I said, others got jobs in the health and safety department. Men back then had a different work ethic. Let's just say that. What that has to do with sound money, or whether that was because of the gold standard or not, is debatable. But the bureaucratic machine was smaller, and people could build majestic things in a short amount of time. And in the beginning, America was booming because they had laissez-faire free market rules. So sound money capitalism showed its true potential to the world. America flourished. That is until another ship set sail from Ireland. This is the Titanic, and on the Titanic there were a bunch of bankers that should have attended a meeting. One of the passengers should have been this guy, J.P. Morgan, but for some odd reason he was not on the Titanic. And I'm not the conspiratory type, But regardless of whether the conspiracy is true or not, and these bankers that were against the formation of the Federal Reserve were actually on the Titanic for that specific purpose, and it was sunk on deliberately, I don't believe that, but I do believe that regardless of what is true or not, we live in the timeline we live in, and the Federal Reserve was established 1913 on the island of Jekyll. So this is Jekyll Island, where they held a meeting. And here's a bunch of important people in suits in the fancy hotel. And they formed the Federal Reserve Bank, which is, what is a central bank? Like, how does the modern monetary system work? Well, fractional reserve banking, this is a TLDR of fractional reserve banking. Someone deposits $100, then the bank is allowed to loan out 90% of that and only keep 10% of it in its reserves. So if you backtrack back to the very beginning of banking, banking is just started as some guy that happened to have a vault, or the equivalent of a vault, like a safe place to store people's gold, mainly gold, other valuables too, but mainly gold. And when people deposited the gold, he gave them receipts for the gold. And people soon realized that they could use the receipts to trade with one another instead of using the actual gold, because the receipts were much easier to carry around. Therefore, they were a better medium of exchange. By the way, I don't like the term store of value. I think the medium of exchange is through space and time. And I think this dichotomy between store of value and medium of exchange is manufactured to a large extent by the bankers. Because what they realized that they could do is that they could print out more receipts than they actually had gold in their vaults to back up. So people started trading receipts, and some banks printed so many receipts so that the bank customers became suspicious, and then they tried to withdraw all their gold at the same time, finding out that there wasn't enough gold in the vaults. This is called a bank run. And it usually led to the bank going bankrupt and the customers of that specific bank losing all their money. Or they had already lost all their money, they just didn't know it yet. But then this banking cartel, these nice people here in the previous picture, where are they? They decided to collude and form a bank for banks, so to speak, the Federal Reserve Bank and other central banks in the world. They work in the same way. So they when a bank run happens, they loan out money to that bank and bail out the bank so that the bankruptcy that shouldn't have happened never happens. Which means that we're living in this perpetual debt machine that just keeps lending out money over and over again, money that has to be paid back with interest that is simply not there because it's made out of thin air. So the machine needs to perpetually expand to function at all. And as Bitcoiners, we're aware of all of this stuff. And we know how bad it is, because what it does is that it gives more power to the government. In the US, new money is printed this way, and also to a process called quantitative easing, which is basically the government selling bonds to the Federal Reserve in exchange for newly minted dollars. But what is a government bond? It is a promise from the government to steal more in the future than what they're stealing now. So it's a promise from the government to raise your children. And they sell that for money created out of thin air. Meaning that they get more and more power to actually fulfill their promise and steal more in the future. So as long as central banking exists, their left and right is pointless. The government will grow, and it will grow like a cancer, and all the institutions will become bigger and bigger, effectively imprisoning everyone. Only this time around, it's not Great Britain, and you have no America to flee to. Like even in New York, people started fleeing even further west. Even though there were tribes of Indians and stuff and dangerous things in America, they chose freedom over captivity. It's like a meme with, I'm sure you've seen it, the lion at the zoo and the lion on the savannah. One has free healthcare and free food and social security, and he's fucking depressed and in a cage. The other one is free and has survived the savannah and is proud and standing tall and strong. Nowadays, you can't really flee to a physical place, but this is what happens when you introduce central banking. This is the Federal Reserve created, and the dollar losing 99% of its value since, or 96.7. I think that number is higher now. Considering, yeah, fun fact, in 2021, so during COVID, 21 million new dollars were printed per Bitcoin mined. Let that sink in. That means that $21 million is eventually a low price for one Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is guaranteed to surpass $21 million per coin if we just let this thing play out, like let the better money take over the worse money. So, and all fiat currencies die at some point. Yeah, now I'm struggling to find a segue here, but I rewatched the Shawshank Redemption one day. We could say, oh yeah, many Irishmen were imprisoned in Shawshank prison. Have you seen this movie?
Yes.
One of the highest rated movies on IMDb. And I realized that this is a movie about time preference. Because you have a character called Brooks Hatlam, this gentleman, he's been in prison all his life. And when he's finally released, when he's like 85 years old, he works in a supermarket for 2 weeks and then hangs himself in a very tragic scene where he carves the words, Brooks was here, on a wall in his apartment, and then hangs himself. Because he was institutionalized, meaning that the prison walls had become sort of, he felt secure inside the prison because he knew the times. He knew he was the lion in the cage. He knew that he would get his meal every 3 times a day. He knew that he was going to bed every day at the same time. Everything was routine and imposed on him by people who had imprisoned him. In the same way, a 9-to-5 job is imprisoning all of us into this perpetual paying taxes and paying inflation. Like if you count every single tax that a person has to pay for a normal workday, like I'd say it's somewhere around, like if you're really honest about the numbers, it's probably around 80%. If you count inflation as a tax, and if you also weigh in that all the exponential growth that could have been, that never happens because the entrepreneurs were taxed. Like when there are no taxes, businesses can grow exponentially because they get to keep all of the profits and they can reinvest, and it becomes better for everyone. But so if you're paying 80% taxes, 4 days out of 5 you're not working for yourself, you're working for your captors, like your kidnappers. Perpetual Stockholm syndrome. And Red, this character, Morgan Freeman's character, he thinks hope is dangerous. He thinks like hope can give you this false sense of that you're going to be released one day and they're going to be nice to you. And that's, in his opinion, that's what killed Brooks. But his friend Andy Dufresne, the main character of the movie, he challenges this opinion and says that hope is like the only thing we've got. And hope is a rational choice. Because guess what? You're going to die anyway. So you might as well be hopeful instead of like thinking that there's no hope and that there will be CBDCs and the EU will, MICA regulation will be even worse. We're going to have to accept a shit ton of cookies in the future. That is one way to tackle the world and to go into the future. But I think hope is a rational choice. You can make, irrefutable arguments for hope being the better choice. Simply because you're going to die anyway. And look at the Soviet Union, which basically was a giant continent-sized prison for everyone in it for 70 years. Nobody got to keep any of the fruits of their labor. But that ended one day because people simply stopped. Communism went away, and now we're creeping our way back to it in different parts of the world. But resistance is always the preferable choice. And no matter how small you think the government is, the correct way to view that is to always insist that it should be even smaller. It's always directionally correct. And Bitcoin is a great enabler of that if we let it be. So this is the prison warden, and he's completely baffled by this hole in the wall in Andy's cell, because Andy has digged himself out of the prison by carrying a spoonful of sand every day for 10 years and digging this tunnel. And once he's free, he makes a little treasure map for his friend Red, and the movie ends with them being all happy on a beach in Mexico. So I would say for us Bitcoiners, what this means is like, the thing to fight for is like, don't listen to what your captors tell you. Like, your kidnappers are telling you have to pay capital gains taxes, you can't use Bitcoin here, you can't use Bitcoin there. Start accepting Bitcoin for your goods and services, and stop giving a fuck about what they are saying, because while it might be like legal, it's not lawful. They have no right. Like, what man has a right to decide what's good and what's not good for another man? Like, as long as you're not harming anyone, why should you give in to whatever politicians decide? I think hope is the rational choice there, and if we fight for that, and if we start, instead of complaining that we can't use Bitcoin and not making an exchange because it's taxed, like, just start using it. Be the revolution we want to see in the world. And don't cheer on for strategic reserves. Cheer for the countries that drop the capital gains tax and like let this thing happen for real. So that is how you find a pot of gold at the end of the real rainbow, not the political rainbow. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much.
We're going to do a few questions and answers there now. If anybody wants to ask any questions, just put up your hand there. Anybody want to ask any questions? Yeah. You want to stand up there? Louise?
Yes, please. Hello, everyone. My name is Luis. Well, I didn't hear someone mention about separation from the here, but yeah, he brought to us like this kind of, we can think about the future and some kind of financial freedom for us or our family. The other topic here in question that I want to make is related to Bitcoin is bringing some kind of freedom that usually people is not remembering sometime. For example, I have a Visa card here in my pocket, right? So who accepts Visa here? No one accepts Visa. No one is able to accept Visa card here. Because we need to go to a third party company. And then this is another company, this will go to another company, then maybe it's paid to someone else, right? And through Bitcoin, we can make peer-to-peer payments. And the question is, in South Africa, in many other countries, they are already able to use Bitcoin as a payment, and because many people doesn't have access to bank account. How do you see this as a revolution for people that doesn't have like IG or documentation, and how this can help many other people, because you need documentation and account and everything?
It's already available everywhere. You can install a Bitcoin wallet and use Bitcoin as medium exchange. It's totally possible everywhere. It's just that in most places people don't dare to do that because they think they have to obey something that someone told them. And like, this is the thing, all Bitcoin is an agreement on a fixed set of rules. We are the nodes. We Bitcoiners are the nodes. We decide what software, what hardware to buy, what software to install, and that becomes the network. So it's all predicated on a human decision. So a miner is not an ASIC in a hangar somewhere. A miner is the guy who decides to buy the ASIC and run the software. And so, and since Bitcoin, like every Bitcoin is owned by someone keeping a secret from someone else. So regardless if that is the secret, if that is your actual 12 words, if it's the location of a hardware wallet, if it's your password to a third-party website, doesn't matter. The point is that Bitcoins cannot really be owned. They are just a secret we keep from one another, and that unlocks gives us the power to move the sats in the UTXO. What this means is that we're all of us are now incentivized to help one another, because the success of Bitcoin is the success of other Bitcoiners. So the more we use this, and the more we help just be friendly to one another, and I've seen this firsthand in Bitcoin companies. Bitcoin companies are much more, like in fiat land, there's backstabbing and you have to fight the competition. In Bitcoin, competition is good, but collaboration is even better, because if Sabright succeeds, Trezor succeeds. So they all have an incentive to help each other succeed. And we're all in the same boat. And this is because at the end of the day, this is just an agreement on fixed set of rules. The reason we agree on this specific set of rules instead of shitcoiner rules is that these rules are more expensive to break than just follow. That means that is what rules without rulers mean. And also that we need overwhelming consensus to change the protocol. That means that if everyone agrees it's a good idea to do it, that's sort of what we define a good idea as. So Bitcoin can, at least theoretically, only change for the better if it changes at all. The whole point is this finite number, something on the internet that can't be copied. And the reason it can't be copied is because it's not on the internet, it's in our heads. It's a part of us. Every single Bitcoin is a part of a human being. So we are now a bigger entity, and this is our cardiovascular system. We are connected in a way that humanity has never been connected before. So we're all, and all of this is voluntary. A democracy is not voluntary. Any type of state is not a voluntary system. Bitcoin is. So it's sort of like a game of chess. Like the two chess players decide they want to play a game of chess. Both have something to gain from doing so because they like doing it. And the rules of chess don't change. The last time they changed was like 1100 years ago. And there's no big chess state to dictate the rules. It's what we come to consensus of is the rules that becomes the rules. So like, Bitcoin is like that. It's just a voluntary agreement.
Okay, very good. We have another question here from Martin.
Cheers. Yeah, my question basically is just around maybe like probably personal security, because it just kind of became apparent to me just a couple of weeks ago when a friend of mine who appears to be obviously wants to have more than Bitcoin, he said maybe you should stop talking so much about Bitcoin, because then they'll know that because I'm into Bitcoin as well. And I noticed recently that there's a lot on the media narrative around, attacks in France, sort of in the continent, recent article in Italian newspaper as well, attacking people that own Bitcoin and crypto. So if we tried to spread word, because I was talking, tried to share it, and as Bitcoin goes up in value, you don't want to be the only one in the village that wants Bitcoin. And but at the same time, as you talk about it more, you could potentially, as the value gets a lot more valuable, you could potentially be putting your family, friends at risk. And I just wonder your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I have many thoughts around that. And that is a fear that has been around since forever in the Bitcoin sphere. Remember that everyone is a FUD salesman. Anyone selling anything really is selling FUD. If I'm selling orange juice, I sell you the fear of that if you don't drink my orange juice, you will be less satisfied in the future. So any good or service is really just FUD. And especially when it comes to Bitcoin security, that's all FUD. It's all like, you need this hardware wallet to be safe, you need this multi-sig solution to be safe, you need this and that, blah, blah, blah. So everyone telling you, look at what the people fear-mongering are selling. Like if they're selling something that has to do with Bitcoin security, they have an incentive to amplify that message and make the threats seem more severe than they are. Now there are plenty of fiat-rich people in the world, and it's pretty easy to figure out who owns what. So it's pretty easy to attack a billionaire in fiat land too. It doesn't have to be a quote-unquote crypto billionaire. Like, sure, there's some risk, but in general, it's easier to steal physical possessions than to steal information. Because the simple fact that if I point a gun to your head and say, give me all your Bitcoins, you don't have to give me all your Bitcoins, because I, the attacker, cannot possibly know how many Bitcoins you have. And that's true today for every single person in the world. I have no idea how many Bitcoins another person has. I can only make an educated guess. And if I point a gun at your head and you've done your Bitcoin security practices properly, you can give me a fraction of your Bitcoin and say that this is all I have. And if I shoot you, no one gets the Bitcoin. And the entire network gets, the Bitcoins get scarcer, number goes up, everyone else in Bitcoin is more powerful. So yeah, you, the individual, might have a higher risk of being attacked, but the organism, the network, grows stronger with every attack. We're a fucking hydra. That's what we are.
Hey, thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot for everything. And what would you like to say, last thing, before we get our next speaker on?
Last word?
Last word.
Bitcoin is my last word. Thank you very much.
Thank you.